Gebet öffnen. Dear Heavenly Father,
Lieber himmlischer Vater,
thank you for this morning worship that we can have
danke für die Morgenandacht, die wir haben können
in light of the Sabbath that is soon to begin.
und auch im Licht des Sabbats, der bald anfängt.
And we ask you to please now bless and strengthen us through your word that we can prepare for the Sabbath.
Und bitte segne und stärke uns durch dein Wort, dass wir uns auf den Sabbat vorbereiten können.
And that Satan cannot control our minds today, but rather the holy golden oil.
Und dass nicht Satan unseren Verstand heute kontrolliert, sondern vielmehr das heilige goldene Öl.
So help us therefore to submit to you, to surrender to your guidance.
Und hilf uns, dass wir uns dir unterwerfen, dass wir uns deiner Führung übergeben.
And that you can change our hearts.
Und dass du unsere Herzen verändern kannst.
And that we can become spiritual.
Und dass wir geistlich werden können.
Help my brother Mark now to relay the thoughts from your word.
Und hilf meinem Bruder Mark, jetzt die Gedanken aus deinem Wort darzulegen.
And help each one of us to receive what you want to impart to us.
Und hilf jedem Einzelnen von uns, das zu erhalten, was du uns geben möchtest.
And we ask and pray in Jesus' name.
Und wir bitten und beten in Jesu Namen.
Amen.
Amen.
Okay, so yesterday we were looking at these different trees,
Also gestern haben wir uns ja diese verschiedenen Bäume angeschaut.
and it was all about the evergreen trees.
Und da ging es ja um diese immergrünen Bäume.
We were seeing that the cedar, the palm tree, the willow, the fig tree, they're all illustrations of God's people.
Man sehen die Zeder, der Palmbaum, der Weidenbaum oder der Feigenbaum, das sind alles Darstellungen gewesen von Gottes Volk.
And it was illustrated because they strike their roots down deep into the soil.
Es war so dargestellt, dass sie ihre Wurzeln dann tief in die Erde eingruben,
so that they might bring forth fruit in due season.
sodass sie dann zur rechten Zeit auch Frucht hervorbringen konnten.
So because of that today, I want to look at the Bramblebusch, right?
Und heute möchte ich dann deswegen diesen Busch,
Das ist nicht Brombeer.
Brombeerbusch anschauen.
Yes. Okay, so go to Judges chapter 9
Gehen wir zu Richter Kapitel 9.
and verse 1.
Richter 9, Vers 1 bis 2.
It says, And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and flesh. Now, to understand this story, you would have had to read prior to this.
Also um die Geschichte zu verstehen, hättest du die Kapitel davor lesen müssen.
But to understand it, Jerubbaal was somebody that the Lord raised up to be a deliverer to God's people in the time of the judges.
Um das aber jetzt hier ein bisschen besser verstehen zu können im Kontext. Jerubbaal war jemand, den Gott damals aufgerichtet hat, um sie von den Feinden dann zu befreien.
Okay, and that's what he did. He delivered them from the, can't remember, but it was some heathen nation, but he delivered them from that.
Also er hat sie auf jeden Fall von einer gewissen heidnischen Nation damals dann befreit, von diesem Baalsanbetung.
Okay, and it says here that he had 70 sons. Right?
Sagt hier, dass er 70 Söhne gehabt hat.
Okay, so first of all, let's look at that. I'll give you 3 witnesses. Go to Exodus 24, verse 9.
Und lass uns das jetzt anschauen. Ich gebe euch 3 Zeugen. Gehen wir erstmal zu 2. Mose 24, ab Vers 9 bis 11.
It says, Then went up Moses and Aaron, Nadab and Abihu, and 70 of the elders of Israel, and they saw the God of Israel. What did these 70 elders see?
Also was haben die 70 Ältesten hier gesehen?
So Gott.
They saw God, right?
Sie haben Gott gesehen.
Okay, and there was under his feet as it were a paved work of sapphire stone, and as it were the body of heaven in his clearness. And upon the nobles of the children of Israel he laid not his hand. Excuse me. Also they saw God and did eat and drink. Okay, so it's marking this revelation that they saw, right?
Okay, jetzt hier diese Offenbarung, die sie hier gesehen haben.
And that they, so when you see God, it represents this point where you're going to get humbled in the dust, right?
Und wenn du Gott siehst, markiert es ja diesen Punkt, wo du in den Staub gedemütigt wirst.
So, if we go to Numbers chapter 11,
Wenn wir jetzt zu 4. Mose 11 gehen,
verse 24,
Vers 24 und 25,
it says, And Moses went out and told the people the words of the Lord, and gathered the 70 men of the elders of the people, and set them round about the tabernacle. And the Lord came down in a cloud. How did he come down?
wie kam der Herr herab?
In a cloud,
In
right?
einer Wolke.
And spake unto him, and took the spirit that was upon him, and gave it unto the 70 elders. And it came to pass that when the spirit rested upon them, they prophesied and did not cease. So what do we see?
Also was sehen wir hier? Das ist Vers
What's it
25.
marking?
Was markiert das jetzt hier?
Yeah, where he comes to pour out the latter rain on those that have been faithful, right?
Also wenn er kommt, um den Spätregen über diejenigen auszugießen, die treu gewesen sind.
And what do they do when they receive this latter rain?
Und was tun sie hier, wenn sie den Spätregen empfangen?
They prophesy and they don't cease,
Sie
right?
fangen an zu weissagen und sie hören damit nicht auf.
So it's very clear to see that the 70 represents the heritage of the Lord. This is his church, right?
Man kann also deutlich sehen, dass die 70 dieses Erbe des Herrn dann darstellen. Das ist
It's his heritage, it's his church.
also seine Gemeinde.
Okay, and lastly, go to Exodus 15,
Nun gehen wir jetzt noch zu 2. Mose 15, Vers
27.
27.
It says, And they came to Elim, where were 12 wells of water, and 70 palm trees, and they encamped there by the waters. How many palm trees?
Wie viele Palmbäume?
70. And what
70.
did we see about the palm trees yesterday?
Und was haben wir über diese Palmen gestern gesehen?
They put into the dry, hot, sunny desert, they put their roots deep and they draw the water, right?
Also in einem trockenen, heißen Wüsten da graben sie ihre Wurzeln tief ein, sodass sie dann das Wasser daraus saugen können aus dem Boden.
So if you go back to Judges chapter 9 and verse 1,
Wenn wir jetzt nochmal zurück zum Anfang gehen, zu Richter 9, Vers 1,
it says, And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal. Now you must understand, he is his son, but he's from a handmaid.
also Abimelech, der Sohn des Jerubbaal, wir müssen verstehen, er war wirklich sein Sohn, aber er war von einer Magd gezeugt.
What does that remind us about?
Woran erinnert uns das?
Sorry? See that?
Der Abraham und
Okay, not Abraham. Isaac and Ishmael, right?
Also von der Geschichte mit Isaac und Ismael.
Okay, so you had these, the son of the bondmaid, right?
Und den Sohn der Mägde.
Okay. So it says, And Abimelech, the son of Jerubbaal, went to Shechem unto his mother's brethren, and communed with them, and with all the family of the house of his mother's father, saying, Speak, I pray you, in the ears of all the men of Shechem, whether is better for you, either that all the sons of Jerubbaal, which are 70 persons, so these 70 who are the church of Christ, or the church of the deliverer,
Hier diese 70, die entweder die Gemeinde von Christus darstellen oder des Befreiers darstellen hier.
reign over you, or that one reign over you. Remember also that I am your bone and your flesh. So what's he trying to do here?
Also was tut er hier in Vers 2?
Yeah, he's trying to put himself in the place of those that have been anointed and appointed to reign over God's church, right?
Also er setzt sich jetzt an die Stelle derjenigen, die an sich
We went back to the
eingesetzt
beginning.
worden sind und gesalbt worden sind, um hier über Gottes Gemeinde zu regieren.
We went back to the beginning, Judges 9.
Also Richter 9, Vers 2 haben wir gerade gelesen.
Okay, now go down and go to verse 3.
Und jetzt gehen wir zu Vers 3, Richter 9, Vers 3.
It says, And his mother's brethren spake of him in the ears of all the men of Shechem, all these words, and their hearts inclined to follow Abimelech. For they said, He is our brother. So what do we see here? What's happening?
So, was passiert jetzt hier in Vers 3? Choose the flesh over the spirit.
Yeah, their hearts are turning from where they were originally, and they're bending their roots towards Abimelech, right?
Also sie wählen jetzt das Fleisch über den Geist. Ihre Herzen verändern sich jetzt in dem Sinne, dass sie ihre Wurzeln jetzt von dort, wo sie hatten, jetzt Richtung Abimelech wenden.
Okay, the 70 represents the organized church that's been anointed by God, right?
Die 70 stellt ja diese organisierte Gemeinde dar, die von Gott eingesetzt worden ist.
And that happens right here, right?
Das passiert ja dann hier.
So we see this in Ezekiel 17. We read it yesterday. Here he puts them and plants them by the waters, right?
Das haben wir von Hesekiel 17 gelesen. Hier nimmt er sie und pflanzt sie dann dort bei den großen Wassern.
And what do they do?
Und was tun sie dann?
They bend their roots towards Egypt, right?
Sie werden ihre Wurzeln Richtung Ägypten wieder umleiten.
Okay, and verse 4.
Oder neigen. Vers 4.
And they gave him 70 pieces of silver. So they're giving him, I'm not quite sure what it means, but it's certainly a symbol of the 70. They're giving it to him, right?
Also sie geben ihm jetzt hier 70 Silberstücke, deswegen wir sehen auf jeden Fall hier ein Symbol von der 70 und sie geben es ihm.
Out of the house of Baalberith, wherewith Abimelech hired vain and light persons which followed him. What sort of people are following him?
Welche Art von Leuten folgen Abimelech nach?
Vain and light persons, right?
Also diese nichtigen und leichtfertigen Leute.
Okay, so go to Numbers chapter 14.
Gehen wir jetzt zu 4. Mose 14.
And I want to show you that this is the omega apostasy. Right?
Ich möchte euch zeigen, dass das jetzt hier der Omega-Abfall ist. Vers 1 bis 4.
It says, And all the congregation lifted up their voice and cried, and the people wept that night. And all the congregation and all the children of Israel murmured against Moses and against Aaron, and the whole congregation said unto them, Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God that we had died in this wilderness? So what do we see here?
Bis Vers 2, was sehen wir hier?
We see the congregation, right?
Wir sehen hier die Versammlung.
Just like we read in Judges, the congregation wanted to choose Abimelech over those that had been anointed, right?
Also wir sehen hier, genau wie in der Geschichte mit Abimelech, dass jetzt hier die Versammlung, die irgendjemand wählen möchte, über diejenigen, die Gott eigentlich eingesegnet hat.
And what do we see here in Numbers 14?
Und was sehen wir hier in 4. Mose 14?
Same thing, right?
Wir sehen dasselbe hier.
They're murmuring against Moses and Aaron, right?
Sie murren hier gegen Moses und Aaron.
Would God that we had died in the land of Egypt, or would God that we had died in this wilderness? And wherefore hath the Lord brought us unto this land to fall by the sword, that our wives and our children should be a prey? Were it not better for us to return unto Egypt? What are they doing?
Also Vers 3, was machen sie?
That they're bending their roots towards Egypt, right, where they've been taken out of.
Sie neigen ihre Wurzeln jetzt wieder Richtung Ägypten, dort wo sie eigentlich vormals rausgeführt worden sind.
And they said one to another, Let us make a captain and let us return to Egypt. So what are they doing?
Was machen sie jetzt hier in Vers 4?
They pick a king, right?
Sie wählen in dem Sinne einen König.
It's the same illustration as we read in Judges, right?
Selbe Darstellung, wie wir das in Richter gelesen haben.
So let's go back to Judges 9 and verse 5.
Gehen wir jetzt dann zurück zu Richter 9 und Vers 5 und 6.
It says, And he went unto his father's house at Ophrah, and slew his brethren, the sons of Jerubbaal, being 70 persons upon one stone. Notwithstanding, yet Jotham, the youngest son of Jerubbaal, was left, for he hid himself. So when they pick this king and bend their hearts towards Egypt, what does it lead them to do?
Also wenn sie jetzt hier diesen König wählen und ihre Herzen Richtung Ägypten sich neigen, was tun sie dann hier?
They not just persecute, they murder them, right? They put them to death.
Also
Right.
sie ermorden jetzt hier die Geschwister, die Brüder.
Okay. It says, and all the men of Shechem gathered together, and all the house of Milo, and went and made Abimelech king by the plain of the pillar that was in Shechem. And we'll
Bis
see
Vers 6.
the exact same thing, because if you go back to Numbers 14 and verse 10,
Und werden wir dasselbe sehen, auch in 4. Mose 14, Vers 10.
the same time that they wanted to pick a king,
Zur selben Zeit, wo sie den König wählen wollten,
it says, but all the congregation bade stone them with stones. And the glory of the Lord appeared in the tabernacle of the congregation before all the children of Israel. So Joshua and Caleb, who gave the true message, they wanted to put them to death. They wanted to stone them, right?
also hier wollte die Versammlung Josua und Kaleb, die die wahre Botschaft gegeben haben, dann töten und steinigen.
So go back to Judges 9, verse 7.
Gehen wir zurück zu Richter 9, Vers 7.
And when they told it to Jotham, he went and stood in the top of Mount Gerizim, and lifted up his voice and cried, and said unto them, Hearken unto me, ye men of Shechem, that God may hearken unto you. So what does he do?
Was tut er hier?
Come on, it's just written there. What does he do? You're reading it literally. What is it being illustrated?
Also was wird hier dargestellt?
Yeah, he lifts up his voice and prophesies to them, right?
Also er hebt jetzt seine Stimme und weissagt.
It says he lifted up his voice and cried. This is symbolic, right?
Also er hob seine Stimme und rief.
Okay,
Das ist symbolisch.
and he said to them, Hearken unto me, that God may hearken unto you. So if they don't hearken unto him, what's not going to happen?
Und er sagt, er hört mir zu, damit Gott euch zuhört. Und wenn sie ihm nicht zuhören würden, was würde dann folglich nicht mit ihm passieren?
Right, if they don't receive this message, right, God is not going to hear them, right?
Würde Gott nicht auf sie hören, weil also sie folglich nicht seine Botschaft empfangen, dann würde Gott sie auch nicht hören.
Now just go to, because he stands on the top of Mount Gerizim.
Und er steht ja hier auf dem Gipfel vom Berg Gerizim.
And if you go to Deuteronomy 11, verse 29,
Und wenn wir jetzt zum 5. Mose 11, Vers 29 kommen,
it says, And it shall come to pass, when the Lord thy God hath brought thee into the land, whither thou goest to possess it, that thou shalt put the blessing upon Mount Gerizim, and the curse upon Mount Ebal. So when Jotham goes up and stands on Mount Gerizim, what is he doing?
also wenn Jotham hier am Gipfel vom Berg Gerizim steht, was tut er dort?
What should they have recognized straight away?
Was sollten sie sofort erkannt haben?
He's the false prophet.
That Jotham's a false prophet?
Oh, I thought.
Mount Gerizim is a blessing, right? He stands on Mount Gerizim and he's given them a message saying, Hear me or God won't hear you. Right?
Also Jotham steht ja auf dem Berg Gerizim, wo das der Berg des Segens ist, und er sagt ja letztendlich, hört mich, damit Gott euch hört.
Okay, Gerizim's on the right, it's the north, and is it Ebal was on the south, right?
Also, I don't know if it was the other way around. Can't remember.
Well, it doesn't matter. Okay, maybe that's a wrong thought, but the point is that it represents the ones that stand on the right hand side of Christ to those that stand on the left hand side of Christ, right?
Also Es stellt auf jeden Fall hier diesen Segen und Fluch dar mit diesen beiden Bergen. Und die einen, die stehen sozusagen auf der rechten Seite Christi und die anderen auf der linken Seite Christi.
Because at the Last Supper, you had John on his right and Satan on his left, right?
Beim letzten Abendmahl war ja Johannes auf der rechten Seite Christi und Judas auf der linken Seite.
So Jotham was showing that he was the true prophet, right?
Und Jotham hat letztendlich damit gezeigt, dass er der wahre Prophet ist.
That the blessings were there for him if they received the message that he was prophesying to them.
Dass die Segnungen für sie da wären, wenn sie seine Botschaft empfangen würden.
Okay, and when he goes up, he starts to speak to them in a parable. And let's look what it says about parables.
Also wenn er da ja hochgeht, dann fängt er an, mit einem Gleichnis mit ihnen zu sprechen. Und lass uns schauen, was die Bibel sagt über diese Gleichnisse.
Psalm 78, verse 2. It says, I will...
Psalm
78.
Psalm 78 ab Vers 2. Im deutschen mag es vielleicht ab Vers 13.
It says, I will open my mouth in a parable. I will utter dark sayings of old. So what is a parable?
Also was ist ein Gleichnis?
Yeah, it's the former things of old, right?
Das waren die früheren Dinge von alters her.
And what did the Lord say to do with the former things of old?
Und was hat er gesagt? Was sollen wir mit den früheren Dingen der Vorzeit tun?
No, remember them, he says, right?
Er sagt, gedenkt denen,
Because they're going to come to pass, right?
weil sie eintreten werden.
So it says, I will open my mouth in a parable, I will utter dark sayings of old, which we have heard and known, and our fathers have told us. Who told them?
Also wer hat ihnen gesagt darüber?
Their fathers,
Die
right?
Väter.
We will not hide them from their children. So what are they now doing?
Also was machen sie jetzt?
They're passing it on to their children,
Sie
right?
geben es weiter an ihre Kinder.
Showing to the generation to come the praises of the Lord and his strength and his wonderful works, what he hath done. For he established a testimony in Jacob and appointed a law in Israel, which he commanded our fathers that they should make them known to their children, that the generation to come might know them, even the children which should be born, who should arise and declare them to their children, that they might set their hope in God and not forget the works of God, but keep his commandments. So by speaking these parables down from generation to generation, what was it designed to do?
Also indem sie diese Gleichnisse von Generation zu Generation weitererzählten, was haben sie damit gemacht?
So to keep God's law, right?
Dass sie dadurch Gott nicht vergessen würden und sein Gesetz halten würden.
It says, and might not be as their fathers, a stubborn and rebellious generation. So
Also bis Vers 8, im Deutschen mag es vielleicht bis Vers 9 sein.
these proverbs are things of old that shows us about the stubborn and rebellious fathers, right?
Also die Gleichnisse lehren uns dann etwas über diese sturen und rebellischen Väter.
And what happened to them?
Und was ist mit ihnen jeweils passiert?
Okay, go to the book of Joel,
Lass uns das im Buch Joel anschauen.
chapter 1 and verse 2.
Joel, Kapitel 1, Verse 2 bis 3.
It says, hear this, ye old men, and give ear, all ye inhabitants of the land. Hath this been in your days, or even in the days of your fathers? Tell ye your children of it, and let your children tell their children, and their children another generation. It's the same illustration as we just read, right?
Selbe Darstellung, die wir gerade zuvor gelesen haben.
So what is Joel telling them?
Also was sagt Joel ihnen?
A parable,
Ein
Right.
Gleichnis
right? About the rebellious fathers, right?
über die rebellischen Väter.
And he's warning them, don't do as they did.
Und er
right?
warnt sie, tut ja nicht dasselbe, was sie getan haben.
Or should I say, yeah, I mean, in that sense he is, but he's also telling the generation that he's speaking to, you have done the same as your fathers, right?
Aber er sagt auch in dem Sinne der Generation, zu der er gerade spricht, ihr habt dasselbe getan wie die Väter.
And how many generations were they to tell it to?
Und zu wie vielen weiteren Generationen sollten sie das dann sagen?
4 generations,
Also
right?
bis hinunter zur 4. Generation.
Okay. And that's important, right? And we'll come to that point in a moment.
Und
Right?
es ist wichtig, das werden wir gleich noch ansprechen.
Okay. So go back to Judges 9 and verse 8.
Jetzt zurück zu Richter 9, Verse 8 bis 9.
Now he's going to tell them this parable, this dark saying of old.
Also jetzt wird Jotham ihnen dieses Gleichnis sagen, diese dunklen Sprichwörter von alters her.
It says, the trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them. And they said unto the olive tree, reign thou over us. But the olive tree said unto them, should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honour God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? Right? So, what is the olive tree saying here? Or what's the illustration teaching?
Also was sagt hier der Olivenbaum? Was ist das für eine Darstellung hier?
What's the olive tree doing? Come on.
Also was macht der Olivenbaum?
What?
He wants to honor God and not be honored of men.
No. I mean, it's true, but that's not what it says. It says, should I leave my fatness, wherewith by me they honour God and man? So what is he doing? What does this olive tree do?
Also sagt hier in Vers 9,
By staying where he is.
sollte ich meine Reichhaltigkeit irgendwie verlassen, womit dann Gott und der Mensch geehrt wird. Also was sagt er hier? Er möchte ja bleiben, wo er ist.
Sorry? No. It's in exactly what's written. He honours God and man. How do you honour God and man?
Also er ehrt damit Gott und den Menschen. Wie macht er das?
Keep the commandments.
Okay, right, you keep God's law, the 2 tables, right?
Indem du Gottes Gebote hältst, die 2
He's basically
Gesetzestafeln.
saying, you're telling me that you want me to not keep God's commandments and you want me to be promoted. So what does that mean?
Also er sagt letztendlich, du möchtest, dass ich nicht mehr Gottes Gebote halte, um letztendlich jetzt hier befördert zu werden. Was bedeutet das?
So it's a tree, right? It's an olive tree which represents God's people being tempted to do something that's contrary to God's law, right?
Also es ist jetzt eigentlich dieser Olivenbaum, der Gottes Volk darstellt, der jetzt versucht wird, etwas zu tun, was im Gegensatz zu Gottes Gesetz steht.
Because in Matthew 23 and verse 12 it says,
Denn in Matthäus 23, Vers 12 sagt es,
whosoever shall exalt himself shall be abased, and he that shall humble himself shall be exalted. Right? So he didn't want to leave the position that had been given him, where he was honouring both God and man, and to lift himself up over a people. Right?
also er wollte die Position, die Gott ihm gegeben hat, nicht verlassen, wo er ja Gott und den Menschen damit geehrt hat, in dieser Position. Und er wollte das nicht verlassen und dann irgendwie dann befördert werden, wenn er das verlassen würde.
So what was he not seeking for?
Also wonach hat er nicht getrachtet?
For position,
Er
right?
hat nicht nach Position
Okay,
getrachtet.
we're getting there, right? Now go back to Judges 9 and verse 10.
Jetzt gehen wir zurück zu Richter 9, ab Vers 10.
And the trees said to the fig tree, come thou and reign over us. But the fig tree said unto them, should I forsake my sweetness and my good fruit and go to be promoted over the trees? So you can see it's a temptation that's been brought upon them, right?
Jetzt erstmal bis Vers 11, also wir sehen, das ist eine Versuchung, die an sie herangetragen wird.
Okay. Then said the trees to the vine, come thou and reign over us. And the vine said unto them, should I leave my wine, which cheereth God and man, and go to be promoted over the trees? So what does his wine do?
Also was macht hier der Weinstock?
It cheers both God and man, right?
Und macht sowohl Gott als auch den Menschen froh.
Okay, we can just look at what it means to be cheered. Go to John 16.
Das können wir jetzt auch schauen, was das bedeutet, dieses Frohmachen. In Johannes 16, Vers 33.
It says, "These things have I spoken unto you, that in me ye might have peace. In the world ye shall have tribulation. But be of good cheer. I have overcome the world." So, when are they to be of good cheer?
Also wann sollten sie hier guten Mutes oder froh sein?
During the time of tribulation,
In der
right?
Zeit der Drangsal.
So it says that this vine brings cheer through his wine, right?
Sagt hier, dass dieser Weinstock, der bringt diesen guten Mut, diese Fröhlichkeit durch seinen Wein.
Okay. So you can clearly see that they're being tempted to choose the right or the wrong, right?
Also sie werden hier versucht, das Rechte oder das Falsche zu wählen.
Okay, and in Matthew chapter 9 and verse 2,
Oder das to choose the right or the wrong, to choose the wrong over the right.
there's a choice to choose right or wrong.
Okay. Also gab es diese Wahl, entweder das Rechte oder das Falsche zu wählen.
It says, "And behold,
In Matthäus 9, Vers 2.
yes, and behold, they brought to him a man sick of the palsy, lying on a bed. And Jesus, seeing their face, said unto the sick of the palsy, Son, be of good cheer, thy sins be forgiven thee." Right? So the only way that you're going to have this cheer is by being rooted into Christ. Right?
Also, die einzige Art und Weise, wie du diesen guten Mut oder diesen Frohsinn haben kannst, ist, indem du in Christus verwurzelt bist.
Okay. Now go back to Judges 9 and verse 14.
Jetzt gehen wir zu Richter 9, Vers 14 zurück.
And we're going to see the choice is between Christ or Satan.
Und da werden wir jetzt sehen, dass die Wahl zwischen Christus und Satan sein wird.
Because in Ezekiel 17, which was a parable, right?
In Ezekiel 17, was ja ein Gleichnis war,
Right?
richtig?
The parable was about two eagles, right?
Dieses Gleichnis handelte ja von zwei Adlern.
And as long as they stayed with the first eagle that was rainbowed, had colors of a rainbow, right?
Und solange sie mit dem ersten Adler verweilten, der Farben wie ein Regenbogen hatte,
They would prosper and flourish, right?
da würden sie gedeihen und ja, es ihnen gut ging.
But this other eagle was Egypt, right?
Aber dieser andere Adler, der war Ägypten.
And it was going to cause them to be uprooted. And they would go from being these cedar trees to being these dry trees,
Und das
right?
würde dann dazu führen, dass sie letztendlich entwurzelt werden würden. Sie würden dann von diesen Zedernbäumen hin zu diesen verdorrten Bäumen sich verwandeln.
Remember?
Erinnert ihr euch?
Just go to Ezekiel 17 and verse 9. We'll see this point.
Gehen wir dann nochmal zu Ezekiel 17. Da werden wir diesen Punkt sehen.
The last couple of verses.
Die letzten paar Verse aus Ezekiel 17 sind das dann.
In fact, just verse 24.
Fangen wir in lesen wir nur Vers 24.
It says, "In all the trees of the field," how many trees? All of them,
Wie
right?
viele Bäume hier? Alle Bäume des
Okay, and
Feldes.
that's these trees because when we started Judges 9, sorry, not Judges 9, when we started this parable, it says about all the trees, right? That's what's in all the trees. Go to the fig tree and ask him to be king, right?
Also das ist dann dieses Gleichnis, wo alle Bäume ja zum Feigenbaum gehen und fragen, dass sie ask the fig tree.
Come on, it's the point I'm making is about all the trees. All the trees go and ask the fig tree, and it says here, all the trees of the field.
Also alle Bäume, die fragen den Feigenbaum, um König zu sein.
It's the same parable, right?
Dasselbe Gleichnis.
It's just the same story being shown in two different ways, right?
Dieselbe Geschichte, einfach nur zwei verschiedenen Arten und Weisen gezeigt.
You get the point I'm making about all the trees, right? The trees is the congregation.
Also könnt ihr den Punkt verstehen über alle Bäume, alle Bäume sind die Versammlung.
Right?
Richtig?
So it says, in all the trees of
I
the...
didn't get the connection. Can you just explain?
Go back to Judges 9 and verse.
And 14 is all.
One second. Okay, Judges 9 and verse 8, when he begins speaking this parable, right?
Also in Richter 9, Vers 8, da fängt er an, dieses Gleichnis zu reden.
It says, the trees, who?
Ja, okay, genau.
The trees went forth on a time to anoint a king over them, and they, the trees, said unto the olive tree, reign over us, right?
Okay, also sie, diese Bäume, sie gingen vorwärts, um einen König über sie zu salben, und sie sagten dann zu dem Olivenbaum, regiere über uns.
So when you go back to verse 14,
Und wenn wir jetzt zurück zu Vers 14 gehen,
it says, then said all the trees unto the bramble. How many trees?
dann sagten hier alle Bäume zu dem Brombeerbusch. Und wie viele sind das? Also wie viele Bäume?
Okay, so now go back to
Alle
Ezekiel
Bäume.
17 and verse 24.
Jetzt gehen wir zurück zu Hesekiel 17, Vers 24.
It says, and all the trees of the field shall know that I, the Lord, have brought down the high tree and have exalted the low tree. What does he do?
Also was hat der Herr hier getan?
Those that don't seek for position get lifted up, right?
Also diejenigen, die hier nicht nach Position trachten, die werden erhöht werden.
It says, have dried up the green tree and have made the dry tree to flourish. Which trees get dried up?
Also welche werden hier vertrocknet?
Yes, but we've already dealt with that point. The green trees. These that were green trees before now become dry trees.
Also diejenigen, die grüne Bäume zuvor waren, die werden jetzt vertrocknete Bäume.
So before they made this stupid decision, right, to pick this king, they were green trees. But after they picked this king, they realized what happened and they became these dry trees.
Also bevor sie diese dämliche Entscheidung getroffen haben, diesen König zu wählen, waren sie noch grüne Bäume, aber nachdem sie diesen König gewählt haben, sind sie jetzt zu diesen vertrockneten Bäumen geworden.
Right?
Richtig?
Okay. So go back to Judges 9 verse 14.
Gehen wir jetzt zurück zu Richter 9, Vers 14 und 15.
Then said all the trees unto the bramble, come thou and reign over us. And the bramble said unto the trees, if in truth ye anoint me over you, then come and put your trust in my shadow. Right? So he's now in this bramble is wanting to exalt himself. He's thinking, okay, I'm going to take upon this role. Right?
Also dieser Brombeerbusch, der möchte sich jetzt über sie überheben oder über sie heben und sagt, ja, okay, ich werde diese Position annehmen.
But he said to them, if I be your king, then you have to put your trust in my shadow. Right?
Er sagt, wenn ich euer König sein soll, dann müsst ihr euer Vertrauen in meinen Schatten setzen.
And then he says, if you don't do that, let fire come out of the bramble and devour the what? The cedars of Lebanon. Who are they?
Das sagt ihr, wenn ihr das nicht tut, dann lasst Feuer vom Brombeerbusch hervorgehen und diese Zedern Libanons verzehren. Also wer sind sie?
They are these green trees, and what's going to happen to them?
Das sind diese grünen Bäume und was wird mit ihnen passieren?
They're going to be destroyed, right? They're going to be
Zerstört
burned
werden,
up.
sie
Because
werden verbrannt werden.
Christ said, if they do this in a green tree, what shall they do to a dry tree, right?
Und Christus hatte gesagt, wenn sie das einem grünen Baum antun, was sollen sie mit einem trockenen Baum tun?
Okay, let's go to Psalm 36.
Gehen wir jetzt zu Psalm 36, Vers 7.
Verse 7. It says, how excellent is thy loving kindness, O God! Therefore the children of men put their trust under the shadow of thy wings. Who's the only person that we are to put our trust in his shadow?
Also vielleicht ist auch Vers 8 im Deutschen. Also wer ist die einzige Person, unter dessen Schatten wir unser Vertrauen setzen sollen?
Christ, right?
Christus.
So who is Abimelech in this illustration?
Also wer ist Abimelech in dieser Darstellung?
Yes, Antichrist,
Er
right?
ist Antichristus.
So remember, when you stand before these trees in the garden, right?
So denkt dran, wenn ihr jetzt vor diesen Bäumen im Garten steht,
because this is all about trees.
denn das geht ja hier um die Bäume.
And remember, it was about you are this tree and you stand before this other tree, right?
Denkt dran, du bist ja dieser Baum und du stehst jetzt vor diesem anderen Baum.
So when you come to stand before that tree, you're a green tree, right?
Deswegen, wenn du jetzt vor diesem Baum stehst am Anfang, dann bist du noch dieser grüne Baum.
But depending on the choices that you make,
Aber abhängig von den Entscheidungen, die du triffst,
whether it will be whether you remain a green tree and bring forth fruit or whether you become dried up, right?
wird dann entscheiden, ob du ein grüner Baum bleiben wirst und Frucht hervorbringen wirst oder ob du vertrocknen wirst.
Because this tree you stand before is going to try and deceive you because it's Antichrist,
Denn
right?
dieser Baum, vor dem du stehen wirst, der wird versuchen, dich zu verführen. Er ist Antichristus.
Okay, so go back to Judges chapter 9 and verse 16.
Gehen wir zurück zu Richter 9, Vers 16.
It says, Now therefore, if ye have done truly and sincerely in that ye have made Abimelech king, and if ye have dealt well with Jerubbaal and his house, and have done unto him according to the deserving of his hands, for my father fought for you, and adventured his life far, and delivered you out of the hand of Midian. So Jotham is telling them, remember that my father delivered you, right?
Jotham sagt ihnen, denkt dran, mein Vater hat euch damals befreit.
Okay. And ye are risen up against my father's house this day, and have slain his sons 70 persons upon one stone, and have made Abimelech, the son of his maidservant, king over the men of Shechem, because he is your brother. If ye then have dealt truly and sincerely with Jerubbaal, and with his house this day, then rejoice ye in Abimelech, and let him also rejoice in you. But if not, let fire come out from Abimelech and devour the men of Shechem. Who's the men of Shechem?
Bis Vers 20, wer sind die Männer Sechems?
They're all the trees.
Sie sind diese ganzen Bäume
They were
gewesen.
all these cedars, right?
Diese ganzen Zedern.
So, but let fire come out from Abimelech, who's this Bramblebusch, right?
Das Feuer von Abimelech hervorkommen, er ist dieser Brombeerbusch.
And devour the men of Shechem and the house of Milo. And let fire come out from the men of Shechem and from the house of Milo and devour Abimelech. So now what do we see?
Bis zum Ende von Vers 20, was sehen wir hier?
Yeah, it's Satan's kingdom. Kingdom against kingdom, brother against brother, right?
Satans Königreich, Königreich gegen Königreich oder Bruder gegen Bruder.
That's the result, right?
Das ist letztendlich das Ergebnis.
And Jotham ran away and fled and went to Beer and dwelt there for fear of Abimelech his father. So this proverb that he's relaying here is warning them, right? It's a warning for us at the end of the world, right?
Dieses Sprichwort, das Gleichnis hier ist eine Warnung für uns hier am Ende der Welt.
Okay, let's go to this first quote it's from Christian Patriotism by A.T. Jones.
Gehen wir jetzt hier zum ersten Zitat von A.T. Jones, Christian Patriotism.
It says, And so it came to pass, for in 3 years the distrust and dissension had so grown between the parties to the transaction respecting the kingship, that open war broke out, which ended only with the death of Abimelech, and with that the end of their experiment in setting up a kingdom. What were they experimenting?
Also womit haben sie experimentiert?
They were rejecting Christ and choosing an earthly king,
Sie haben
right?
Christus verworfen und einen irdischen König gewählt.
So it was a warning in Judges for the future, right?
Das war also eine Warnung im Buch Richter für die Zukunft.
And had they passed it on faithfully from generation to generation, what should the generations coming after not have done?
Und hätten sie das getreulich von Generation zu Generation weitergegeben, was hätten die zukünftigen Generationen dann nicht getan?
What should they have not done?
Pick the king.
Picked a king,
Sie
right?
hätten keinen König gewählt.
Okay, right, so next paragraph.
Nächster Absatz.
Now all this was held up before all Israel who should come after, as a solemn warning and a forcible admonition of what would inevitably be the result of any attempt at setting up a kingdom. And when in disregard of all this, and against the Lord's open protest, they did at last again set up a kingdom, this very result, though longer delayed, did inevitably come. And this is when they picked Saul, right?
Das ist ja, als sie dann Saul gewählt haben als König.
And had they been faithful, passing down through the generations this story, they would never have done that.
Aber hätten sie davor treulich gehandelt und diese Geschichte hier als Richter den ganzen Generationen danach weitererzählt, dann hätten sie Saul niemals gewählt.
So go to 1 Samuel chapter 8.
Gehen wir jetzt zu 1. Samuel Kapitel 8
and look at that story.
und lassen uns diese Geschichte anschauen.
Verse 4.
1. Samuel 8 ab Vers 4.
It says, Then all the elders of Israel gathered themselves together and came to Samuel unto Ramah. Who gathered themselves together?
Also wer hat sich hier versammelt?
All the trees,
Alle
right?
Bäume,
All the congregation.
die gesamte Versammlung.
And they are elders, right?
Sie sind Älteste.
So they are these green trees,
Das sind
right?
also diese grünen Bäume.
And said unto him, Behold, thou art old, and thy sons walk not in thy ways. Now make us a king to judge us like all the nations.
Bis
So-
Vers 5.
They're fulfilling this parable, right?
Also sie erfüllen dieses Gleichnis.
They want to put the bramble bush in place instead of these trees that are rooted and grounded in the truth,
Also
right?
sie wollen diesen Brombeerbusch dort an den Platz setzen, anstatt dass sie diese Bäume sind, die dann fest gegründet sind an ihrem richtigen Platz.
But the thing displeased Samuel when they said, Give us a king to judge us. And Samuel prayed unto the Lord. And the Lord said unto Samuel, Hearken unto the voice of the people in all that they say unto thee. For they have not rejected thee, but they have rejected me, that I should not reign over them. So when
Bis Vers 7.
Abimelech, through this congregation, they murdered these 70, it was a rejection of Christ, right?
Also dass sie Abimelech gewählt haben und die Versammlung dann, oder Abimelech und seine Männer dann diese 70 umgebracht haben. Das war letztendlich eine Verwerfung Jesu Christi.
Because Christ's church, through the 70, was his chosen people, right?
Und Christi Gemeinde, dargestellt durch diese 70, war seine auserwählten Leute.
Okay. It says, verse 8,
In Vers 8.
According to all the works which they have done since that day, that I brought them up out of Egypt, even unto this day, wherewith they have forsaken me and served other gods, so do they also unto thee. Now therefore hearken unto their voice, howbeit yet protest solemnly unto them, and show them the manner of the king that shall reign over them. So when Samuel does this, what's he doing?
Bis Vers 9, also was macht jetzt hier Samuel, wenn sie das hier tun?
He's standing on Mount Gerizim and he's warning them what's going to happen.
Steht in
Right?
dem Sinne auch auf dem Berg Gerizim und warnt sie jetzt über das Ergebnis, wenn sie das hier tun wollen.
Just like Jotham did, right?
Genauso wie Jotham es getan hat.
Okay, in verse 11.
Vers 11.
And he said, This will be the manner of the king that shall reign over you. He will take your sons and appoint them for himself, for his chariots, and to be his horsemen, and some shall run before his chariots. And he will appoint him captains over thousands and captains over 50s, and will set them to ear his ground and to reap his harvest, and to make his instruments of war and instruments of his chariots. And he will take your daughters to be confectionaries, and to be cooks, and to be bakers. And he will take your fields and your vineyards and your olive yards, even the best of them, and give them to his servants. And he will take the 10th of your seed and of your vineyards, and give to his officers and to his servants. And he will take your men servants and your maid servants and your goodliest young men and your asses, and put them to his work. And he will take the 10th of your sheep, and ye shall be his servants. You shall be his what?
Bis Vers 17, also du sollst was werden?
Servants.
Du
So when you're a servant, what are you in?
Knechte sein. Also wenn du ein Knecht bist, was bist du dann?
In
Du
bondage,
bist dann in
right?
Gefangenschaft.
And ye shall cry out in that day because of your king, which ye shall have chosen you, and the Lord will not hear you in that day.
Bis Vers
Right?
18.
So he won't hear their prayers anymore, right?
Er wird ihre Gebete nicht mehr hören.
Okay, so the message was to go down to how many generations?
Also die Botschaft sollte an wie viele Generationen weitergebracht werden?
To 4, right?
4 Generationen.
So go to Ezekiel chapter 8,
Gehen wir zu Hesekiel 8.
and you have these 4 abominations,
Da haben
right?
wir diese 4 Gräuel,
Which parallel the 4 generations.
die dann auch parallel sind zu 4 Generationen.
Okay, so the Lord only goes with you to the 4th, right?
Der Herr geht mit dir immer nur bis zur 4. Generation.
And here the 4th abomination, verse 17.
Jetzt hier dieses 4. Gräuel, Verse 17 und 18.
And he said unto me, Hast thou seen this, O son of man? Is it a light thing to the house of Judah that they commit the abominations which they commit here? For they have filled the land with violence, and have returned to provoke me to anger, and lo, they put the branch to their nose. Therefore will I also deal in fury. Mine eye shall not spare, neither will I have pity. And though they cry in mine ears with a loud voice, yet will I not hear them. Right? So when you pick this king, you're basically closing your probation. Right?
Also wenn du diesen König wählst, dann schließt du damit letztendlich deine Gnadenzeit.
Because you're putting man, which is Antichrist, in place of God.
Denn du setzt jetzt hier den Menschen, welcher Antichristus ist, an die Stelle Gottes.
And Antichrist is the one that will get you to worship Sunday. Right?
Der Antichrist wird dich ja dazu führen, dass du Sonntag anbetest.
When you do this, you receive the mark of the beast. Your probation closes.
Und wenn du das tust, dann erhältst du das Mahlzeichen des Tieres, deine Gnadentür geht zu.
So, the true trees, right? Because the true trees will have a revelation given to them, right?
Und die wahren Bäume, sie erhalten eine Offenbarung.
And what will that revelation reveal to them?
Und was wird ihnen diese Offenbarung zeigen?
That they're actually dry trees, that they need the latter rain, right?
Dass sie in Wirklichkeit vertrocknete Bäume sind und dass sie den Spätregen brauchen.
That they're not ready to be this kingdom, right?
Dass sie noch nicht bereit sind, dieses Königreich zu
That they
sein.
have to tarry,
Dass sie
right?
noch warten müssen.
Because when you go to Daniel chapter 7 and verse 13,
Denn wenn du jetzt zu Daniel 7, Vers 13 und 14
it says,
gehst,
I saw in the night visions, and behold, one like the Son of Man came with the clouds of heaven. So when he comes with the clouds of heaven, what does he do?
also wenn er jetzt auf den Wolken des Himmels kommt, was tut er hier?
What does it represent?
Was stellt das dar?
The second coming, right?
Das zweite Kommen.
And he pours out the latter rain, right?
Und er gießt den Spätregen aus.
And came to the Ancient of Days, and they brought him near before him, and there was given him dominion and a glory and a kingdom, that all people, nations, and languages should serve him. His dominion is an everlasting dominion which shall not pass away, and his kingdom that shall not be destroyed. In verse 18.
Vers 18.
But the saints of the Most High shall take the kingdom and possess the kingdom forever, even forever and ever. So the sin is that you try to set up your own kingdom prior to the appointed time, right?
Die Sünde besteht darin, dein eigenes Königreich aufzurichten vor der bestimmten Zeit.
And you put an earthly, sinful man in place of Christ,
Und du setzt einen irdischen, sündigen Menschen an die Stelle Christi.
right?
Richtig?
So when you choose to listen to Abimelech's voice over God's voice, which came through Jotham, that will be the result,
Also
right?
wenn du letztendlich wählst, Abimelechs Stimme zu gehorchen, anstatt der Stimme Jothams, der in Gottes Auftrag gesprochen hat, dann wäre das letztendlich das Resultat.
So that's why when we stand before these earthly kings, they're going to try and deceive us to listen to their voice over the plain command of God, right?
Deswegen, wenn wir vor diesen irdischen Herrschern stehen, dann werden sie uns versuchen zu verführen, dass wir dann ihnen gehorchen, anstatt dem klaren Gebot Gottes.
And we read yesterday this quote, when you take that vaccination, what does it cause you to do?
Und wir haben ja gestern dieses Zitat gelesen, dass wenn du diese Impfung nimmst, was wird sie mit dir anrichten?
Become angry.
Yes, it causes you to war, right?
Ja, du wirst zornig und es wird dich dazu bringen, dass du kriegstreibend wirst.
War against who?
Krieg gegen wen?
Christ.
Yes, but you're missing the point. Kingdom against kingdom, brother against brother. This is what Satan sets us to do, right?
Also Königreich gegen Königreich, Bruder gegen Bruder, das ist ja, was Satan in uns bewirken möchte.
That's what it showed in the parable also, right?
Und das ist ja auch, was im Gleichnis gezeigt wird.
Okay, you see, it's the same story over and over again,
Wir können
right?
sehen, es ist dieselbe Geschichte immer und immer wieder.
Okay, go to the next quote.
Gehen wir zum
From
nächsten Zitat.
1888 materials.
Das sind 1888er Materialien.
Okay. It says, "Then there appeared before us a tall, dignified man who said, 'Gather the roses, the lilies, and the pinks, discard the brambles, and touch them not.' Then I awoke, and when I went to sleep, I dreamed the very same thing again. 3 times I had the same dream, and I arose because I could not sleep, and wrote to Sister Martha the dream that I had." Right? So 3 times, right?
Also 3-mal.
It's the symbol of this everlasting gospel, right?
Das Symbol dieses ewigen Evangeliums.
What does it say in this vision 3 times?
Und was sagt es in dieser Vision 3-mal?
Don't pick the bramble, right?
Wähle nicht diesen Brombeerbusch.
Okay, Luke.
Oder pflück ihn nicht.
So go to Luke 6, chapter 43.
Gehen wir zu Lukas 6, Vers 43.
It says, "For a good tree bringeth not forth corrupt fruit, neither doth a corrupt tree bring forth good fruit. For every tree is known by his own fruit. For of thorns men do not gather figs, nor of a bramble bush gather they grapes." Right?
Das ist Vers 44.
Amen.
Moment.
So the corrupt tree is the bramble tree. That it will not bring you forth the grapes that you're looking for.
Also
Right?
dieser verdorbene Baum ist dieser Brombeerbusch, der wird dir nicht diese Trauben hervorbringen, nach denen du Ausschau hältst.
It says, "A good man out of the good treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is good." This is Jotham.
Vers 45, das ist Jotham.
"And an evil man out of the evil treasure of his heart bringeth forth that which is evil." This is Abimelech,
Der böse Mann, das ist Abimelech,
the bramble bush.
dieser Brombeerbusch.
"For of the abundance of the heart his mouth speaketh." Right? Okay, so last verses, go to Isaiah 34.
Jump over the quote.
I thought there was something missing here. I must have deleted it accidentally. Let me just,
You can pause it.
no, it's okay, I'll just go back. Okay, it's there. I must have been pressing things here, not realizing. Okay, the quote is from 14 LTMS.
Did you put it in German?
Posted 3 quotes. It says,
Also das letzte Zitat.
"When they transgressed, Adam and Eve could no longer cultivate their beautiful Eden home. They were shut out of the garden to work among the thistles and brambles which Satan had sown." Right? So the bramble bush is a symbol of Satan, right?
Also dieser Brombeerbusch, sehen wir hier, ist ein Symbol für Satan. Satan hat es gesät.
Satan had told them that by eating of the forbidden fruit, they would have higher perceptions to know good and evil, and that they would be like the angels in heaven. They had believed the great apostate, but they proved his words a lie. Henceforth they must work among the thorns and weeds brought by the curse. Okay, so go to Isaiah 34,
Jetzt gehen wir zu Jesaja 34.
verse 8.
Jesaja 34, Vers 8.
And this is about the punishment that comes upon Babylon, right?
Also das spricht jetzt hier über die Bestrafung, die über Babylon kommt.
So when Christ comes, he blesses one group and he's going to curse the other,
Wenn
right?
Christus kommt, wird er eine Gruppe segnen, aber die andere verfluchen.
And Jotham, he was standing on Mount Gerizim giving the blessing, right?
Jotham, er stand dann auf dem Berg Gerizim und hat den Segen ausgesprochen.
So the opposite from that is the curse, which is Abimelech, right?
Und der Gegensatz dazu wäre ja der Fluch, was Abimelech ist.
It says, "For it is the day of the Lord's vengeance and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. And the streams thereof shall be turned into pitch, and the dust thereof into brimstone, and the land thereof shall become burning pitch. It shall not be quenched night nor day, the smoke thereof shall go up forever, from generation to generation. It shall lie waste, none shall pass through it forever and ever. But the cormorant and the bittern shall possess it, the owl also and the raven shall dwell in it, and he shall stretch out upon it the line of confusion, and the stones of emptiness. And they shall call the nobles thereof to the kingdom, but none shall be there, and all her princes shall be nothing. And thorns shall come up in her palaces, nettles and brambles in the fortresses thereof, and it shall be an habitation of dragons and a court for owls."
Bis Vers 13.
So we need to be an evergreen tree, right?
Also wir müssen dieser immergrüne Baum sein.
Not a bramble tree,
Und nicht ein Brombeerbusch.
because a bramble has thorns and thistles, or thorns on it, should I say.
Weil ein Brombeerbusch hat ja diese Dornen.
Right? So, we see all the correlations.
Können wir diese ganzen Zusammenhänge sehen?
Okay, so this text that's before us is very clear. It's been illustrated in so many different illustrations for us.
Deswegen dieser Test, der vor uns liegt, der ist also sehr deutlich durch diese ganzen verschiedenen Darstellungen uns aufgezeigt.
Do we remain in the Garden of Eden as an evergreen tree?
Die
Right?
Frage ist dann, ob wir im Garten Eden als ein immergrüner Baum bleiben
Or do we bend our heart now towards the civil powers
oder neigen wir jetzt unser Herz diesen Staatsmächten zu
and believe what they tell you over and above what God's word says?
und ihnen dann glauben würden, anstatt was Gott sagt, also über Gottes Wort.
This is our test, right?
Und das wird unser Test sein.
It's not about our righteousness, it's about believing in God, right?
Es geht nicht um unsere eigene Gerechtigkeit, sondern es geht darum, Gott zu glauben.
So regardless of what's revealed to you, your condition, He promises that He can save you, right?
Und ganz gleich, was auch über deinen Zustand dir noch offenbart wird, er verspricht dir, dass er dich retten kann.
Okay, so we don't have to worry about the accusations, the deceptions and all these other things. We must just stick to the promise.
Deswegen müssen wir nicht uns irgendwie Sorgen machen über die Anklagen und Verführungen und so weiter. Wir müssen einfach den Verheißungen vertrauen.
Amen?
Amen.
Okay, let's close. Dear Heavenly Father,
Lieber himmlischer Vater,
Lord, we want to thank you for this understanding that you've given us,
wir möchten dir für dieses Verständnis danken, das du uns gegeben hast.
and how all these things are repeating the same story,
Wie all diese Dinge dieselbe Geschichte wiederholen.
warning us what's about to come,
Und sie warnen uns über das, was kommen wird.
and warning us not to repeat those very same things.
Und sie warnen uns nicht, dieselben Dinge zu wiederholen.
Lord, I pray that you'll help us to make these things our meditation,
Ja, ich möchte bitten, dass du uns hilfst, dass wir diese Dinge unsere Meditation machen, also dass wir darüber nachdenken.
that we would put them in our heart that we might not sin against you.
Dass wir sie in unser Herz legen, damit wir nicht gegen dich sündigen.
We just ask now for your grace for this day,
Wir bitten jetzt um deine Gnade für diesen Tag
and help us to be faithful to you through all the little things that are set before us.
und hilf uns, dass wir treu sind in den Dingen, die du vor uns gelegt hast, in den kleinen Dingen.
And we ask this in the name of Jesus.
Und das bitten wir im Namen Jesu.
Amen.
Amen.